Welcome everyone to today's panel discussion. In 2015, all member countries of the United Nations adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. At the heart of this 2030 Agenda are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or we call them UN SDGs. Now, SDGs include issues like poverty, hunger, health, education, clean water, sanitation, clean energy, industry innovation and infrastructure, sustainable cities, and a lot more. While all of these are worthwhile goals, they are also huge. They're huge challenges, they are Herculean goals, and they require tremendous efforts from a large number of institutions and individuals around the world. Our today's focus is on goal number 9, or UN SDG 9. And you can also see it on the background of my screen or Zoom background, driving sustainability in industry, infrastructure, and innovation. However, we'll also be talking about other UN SDGs, as many of them are interrelated, and obviously all of them are extremely important. So it is my pleasure and privilege to today to welcome 4 of these champions who have been doing fantastic work in their respective areas to support the UN SDGs. And we have, in no particular order, Dr. Solomon Darwin, Director at Garwood Center for Corporate Innovation at UC Berkeley, Haas School of Business, Gregory Kepferle, CEO of Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County, Shawn Seipler, Founder, CEO, and Executive Director of Clean the World Foundation, and Gundavelli, Founder and CEO of Touch a Life Foundation. So may I request each of the panelists to give a short 2-minute self-introduction, about yourself. And later we'll have an opportunity to talk about the great work that you do. So I'm just starting in random order. Tej, would you like to introduce yourself?
Nice to meet everyone here. It's a pleasure speaking with the esteemed panel here today on our UN sustainability goals and the importance of innovation towards driving our sustainability and development goal efforts. I'm the founder of Touch a Life Foundation, the host of today's World Kindness Day. Touch a Life Foundation started as a nonprofit organization in the Bay Area, where we started out giving backpacks, books, and sweaters to homeless populations within the city of San Jose, and slowly to Santa Clara. Eventually, we evolved into a much broader organization that focused on connecting donors to donees. We want to make sure that we can build a marketplace where those who can give can connect to those who are in need, and to ensure that the culture of kindness is proliferated throughout the world and throughout for the users of our application. And so with that goal in mind, we've developed a TAL application, developed a community of TAL scouts, and have developed several programs that involve inspiring kindness on our TAL radio application. And so our goal is to create a suite of products and tools and services and content that helps inspire people and helps them think about making the world a better place, and helps encourage volunteering and helps encourage the general spirit of kindness within people's local community.
Fantastic, and I think that's the reason we are here today. Thank you to TAL. And next, may I request Shawn Seipler for a brief introduction?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. It's a very humbled honor to be alongside this great panel full of tremendous impact. I'm the founder and CEO of Clean the World. We're a global social enterprise. We're comprised of almost 18 companies across the globe. We operate in 127 countries across the globe. We are a hybrid organization, primarily combined of 501c3 nonprofit and the like in the various countries that we operate, and then certified B Corp, B Lab certified B Corp as our head company on what we call the for-profit side out of Clean the World Ventures. So I serve as the chairman of the board for the nonprofits and as the CEO of the B Corp organizations. 12 years. We were founded 12 years ago, and our primary goal is to create impact products and programs that corporations can engage with, can participate in, can sponsor, can purchase, each of which have very clear, sustainable, and social impact outcomes. We measure those outcomes, we report those outcomes, and allow our partners and donors and supporters to own those outcomes and to participate in various ways to create a more sustainable future, to create more impact, to help those in need, whether that's in the areas of health and hygiene, poverty, just a number of areas that I know we'll talk about on today's panel. So again, very, very happy to be a part and to tell you more about Clean the World and all the wonderful things that we're doing. And again, very honored to be alongside this great group.
Thank you so much, Shawn. Gregory Kepferle.
Thank you, Tushar. I'm Greg Kepferle. I'm the CEO of Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County. And I've been here for almost 16 years and in the Catholic Charities National Network, part of Catholic Charities USA, in different locations for over 30 years. And Catholic Charities works to disrupt poverty here in Silicon Valley, but also nationally. We work to alleviate, prevent, and reduce poverty for people of all cultures and beliefs. And in turn, we are part of Charities Internationalis, which is a global network of Catholic Charities organizations working in countries all over the world to help alleviate the situations of poverty that people find themselves in. I'm particularly interested and excited about being part of World Kindness Day because I absolutely believe that no matter all of our good plans and projects and work that we have, the core of that is the fundamental kindness and compassion that we have for our neighbor, and how we engage in those solutions in relationship to each other as human beings is so critical. So thank you so much for this invitation.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Solomon Darwin.
Yes, amen to that, Greg. What you just said, that's very, very important. I think Shawn and the work you're doing and what Tushar also articulated. My name is Solomon Darwin. I am the executive director at UC Berkeley for two centers. One is the Center for Growth Markets. Here we focus on where majority of the people on Earth live. They don't live in the United States, they live elsewhere in the world, India, Indonesia, and all those places. So emerging economies, the business models that work here don't work there. And so we are coming up with different innovative ways how to promote sustainability and as well as also create value for companies. So, but it requires a different business model by which companies have to survive. That's my focus at the Garwood Center for Corporate Innovation. I'm working on how companies, large companies in the Silicon Valley, I work with about 40 companies here in the Valley. They are members of our Berkeley Innovation Forum. These are elite companies that have business models that are not working, and they don't work for majority of the people on Earth. They only work for the rich man who is right here in the West. So how do we create to help them to go into innovative ways of adapting different business models in emerging economies? So those are the two centers that I work on, different focuses. But this topic of sustainability is a part of my own personal agenda besides the professional agenda, and that is to how do you promote sustainability And infrastructure, innovation, business models cannot be the enemies of sustainability. And sustainability is also useless if it does not make people happy. And that's the other thing. So at the end of the day, people want to be happy and secure and safe, and that on the planet, and that cannot be the case. And I recently wrote a book on how to think like the CEO of the planet, the declining balance sheet of the earth. So I used to be an accounting professor before, and I used to think accounting wise, and that earth has a balance sheet, but it does not have a CEO. We can't give a earnings report on quarterly on Wall Street. So, but the earth's balance sheet is declining very, very fast at the expense of the corporate balance sheets that are inflated and creating a lot of perceived value that are bubbles. So I think we are coming to the end of our rope, and that's it. So it's at the heart of my my work at Berkeley. Thank you.
Fantastic. There is a couple of things that I get reminded of. One is there is so much work to do around the world. And secondly, there are so many different areas, and it's so fantastic to have, people who have been doing it on the ground level, all this work. And I'm excited to hear more about it. I'm sure so is our audience. So my next question is, from your perspective and experience, and everyone is working in a different area, what is the importance and urgency of the 17 UN SDGs, sustainability? What are some of the challenges we face?
In my experience, is that when we try to solve one problem or one issue, we pretty quickly find that when we pull on the thread, let's say of education, or pull on the thread of, say, homelessness, or pull on the thread of mental illness, or pull on the thread of unemployment. Once you pull on each of those threads, you pretty soon find that they're all connected. And they're all connected not just for the individual and the family and the local communities, but they're connected globally. And the issue of sustainability is not just about one thread of, say, infrastructure, or one thread of education or inclusion, but it's all of that together. And so the importance, I would say, is one, that we see the interconnectedness of all of the sustainability goals. Two, that it is about the sustainability of the planet and of humanity within that planet, within that ecosystem. And three, it takes all of us, all the institutions, whether it's government, NGOs, private corporations, entrepreneurs, and the local communities. And it needs to be grounded in the lived reality of those local communities around the world, where they have the self-determination to say what will make them happy, what will help sustain them. And then our job either is to get out of the way or to help wrap around our services or resources and policies and systems in a way that truly does make it sustainable.
That makes a lot of sense, all 3 points. And the same question I'll ask Shawn. From your perspective, what is the importance and urgency of the 17 SDGs and some challenges we face?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that the importance and the urgency we see on a daily basis. I mean, we have never lived at a time where information, news cycles, what's going on in the world, whether that be within the spectrum of climate change or social justice or government, civil liberties, we see it on a regular basis. So I think the urgency, the importance is it's turn on the news on any given day and you'll see it. I think what's interesting is that we live in this time where, as the younger generations who have been exposed to that information at a younger age and at a more the pace by which and the amount by which they have been able to see and retain and digest, compared to, for example, when I was young or when our other panelists, I'm sure, were young, it's really night and day. And I think it has changed the way that many of the younger generations, whether it's millennials or the Gen Y, Gen Z, their view on these 17 SDGs and what they are attempting to do, and what we as a world and as global communities need to come together to do, I think their view is much more favorable to accomplishing those goals and to living in those in this type of a world, versus, I think Dr. Darwin touched on this, versus the economically, the rich class, right? Those that run the companies, those that run the balance sheets, those that run corporate America. But there's this convergence that's happening. And I'm privileged to be able to speak at colleges around the world on social entrepreneurship and social enterprise and social impact. And more and more, what we are seeing in this term, the conscious capitalism sort of areas, where we're seeing corporations and companies understand that this is where their consumers are, understand this is where their consumers are going to be. Maybe that's not exactly where their consumer base is today, but where it's going to be. But I think in many cases, they're taking their time getting there. And the pace is not as urgent as we need to be in order to really attack the issues that we have going on across the globe today. And I think some of those issues are happening at a faster pace than perhaps those with the true economic means to be able to help solve some of these incredible issues are really taking it. So I continue to when I speak at colleges and just when we talk in general, continue to tell the consumer to continue to drive and use the power of the dollar, the power of their currency, the power of their spending power to use it for good. Purchase products, purchase brands, purchase companies, invest in companies and brands that are doing the right things. And I think we've got a lot of great entities out there too that are helping to measure that. And certainly the UN SDGs are part of that. Corporations trying to figure out exactly how to measure the things that they are doing to impact that. So and I'll kind of leave you this last, there's an interesting trend that's happened, right? The baby boomers, who really are the holders of the dollars, they were the most and are the most philanthropic generation in the history of the world. They outgave all other generations prior. Okay. And then when you sort of get to the millennials and Gen Yers, they were the most socially conscious generation in the history of the world, only to be outpaced now by Gen Z, who is even more socially conscious. So I look at that with hope and with optimistic lens that we can move in that direction. I just hope and pray that the urgency is there and that the timing is there, so that, as Dr. Darwin said, the balance sheet, those assets don't dry up, and then we are left in a catastrophic situation. And I'd venture to say that what we've just come out of or are still experiencing with this global pandemic is a result of us not being urgent enough in dealing with some of these things that I think were being, alarms were being sounded many years ago around that. So I have hope that we, as a society, as a planet, are, as global citizens, want to move in that direction. The key is going to be, are we going to understand the urgency and the pace that needs to be there, and will corporate side of our global communities understand that too, and really double down and double invest into the areas that are much needed in order to accomplish these critical goals.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear that perspective and the generational view of this huge issue that we are facing. Dr. Solomon, your views?
Yes, what Gregory was saying is that everything is so interconnected that all those goals are important, but I believe that some are more important than others. And I think we address them in that priority, because how long can a human being survive without water? Water is important. You can't live. How long can you live without air, oxygen? And that is important. How long can you live without food? Which means not only the food is important, but the arable land right next to freshwater rivers is important, right? And I think in that order, I won't even put housing as a priority, because at one time, we as human beings lived in caves. And we did pretty well. We went after the deer or the animals, and we just ate, lived off the land. And when it comes down to that, I really believe that I think we need to address these in order of priorities. But we live in an ecosystem. We cannot say, I don't have no need of certain animals and creatures because birds or beasts, and because they are everything is essential. So I think that's to have that holistic view is very important. And I think we address that at UC Berkeley in a way that of ecosystems, that ecosystems are are interdependent. They seek the welfare of the other. So everyone wins, no one loses. And things that are not working should be eliminated. Ecosystem, your body is an ecosystem. It gets rid of waste, very wonderfully. It kills bacteria, but it's interdependent. The lungs and the heart, and they're all they do their individual jobs, but they're very, very complementary. And we as human beings are coming to a point, I think COVID is a good forewarning of that we need to work as an ecosystem and to be better stewards of our own planet, and forget about wasting a lot of money on other things or going into other planets and so on. I think let's kind of take care of what we have right here, and that is my focus. And I think what Greg was saying is right. We are here to inherit the earth, and God did not create the earth in vain, but to be inherited, so that we are here to a stewardship is very, very important in this case. And I think we all need to feel a sense of it. And what Shawn was also saying, that this coming generation feels that responsibility of stewardship of the planet.
Fantastic. Yeah, great. And Tej, what are your views on this question?
I think the UN sustainability goals do a great job of comprehensively showing all of the various efforts that are required. And as the panelists said earlier, we live in an ecosystem, and all of these issues are independent. I think COVID has shown us for the first time that a public health crisis can turn into an economic crisis. And climate change is further showing us that even a climate crisis can turn into an economic crisis as well in the future. And that requires efforts within infrastructure. That requires efforts in how we educate the public. What we really need to start looking at is understanding how issues within clean water, as Dr. Darwin mentioned, can start to affect things like poverty and make poverty worse, which further will affect people's access to quality education. If people are not eating right, if people are not having the right access to food, then they will not be able to concentrate on their education at all. And if they're not able to concentrate in education, but we're not able to train the upcoming generation for fighting the problems that we face in the future. And so many of these problems are interconnected, and they require us bringing talent to each of these areas such that they can be solved reliably and in such a way that sets us up for the future and sets us up for solving these problems in the right way. And so what the first step always is understanding the problem comprehensively rather than through a narrow lens. And I think these sustainability goals make us understand the breadth of the problem rather than focusing everyone towards an individual problem set, which can happen so often.
Yep. Our global connectedness, as well as looking at the problem through systemic and a holistic view. So thank you. And so I'm asking this next question, which is, tell us a little bit about your journey. You already insinuated to the area of work you do to support the UN SDGs, but it would be kind of interesting to know, how did you get started? What inspired you? What are your efforts and the kind of impact it's having on people? So it would be great to hear your story in your own words, maybe in about 3 to 5 minutes or so. And I know each one of you looks so passionate about what you do, and you can probably go on and on, but considering the time, maybe about 3 to 5 minutes. This time, I'd like to start with you, Tej, if it's okay.
Definitely. So as I mentioned in my intro, I started the Touch of Life Foundation. We started as a nonprofit organization. Back when I was in high school, I went to a Catholic high school within the Bay Area, and an emphasis on service was heavily placed within its student body. It was required that we did public volunteering, and we got to see a side of the Silicon Valley that is typically not seen amongst the youth within the Bay Area, especially when you consider the fact that Silicon Valley is typically thought of in terms of its tech giants and its unicorns and software engineering. But what had been growing at the time was a large homeless population, and that continues to be the case today. And we had interacted with a lot of them through Sacred Heart Community Service and several other community centers within the Bay Area. And I had started to learn that even within the very high school district that I lived in, there were more than 100 homeless high school students, meaning there were students of my age, more than 100, that, lacked access to transportation to their schools, had lost their houses within fires, had parents who were mounted in medical debt, or had faced cancer, and because of that were obviously not just unable to concentrate with school, but went to school having to think about far more basic needs than your average high school student will have to think of. I mean, when I was in high school, obviously I was thinking about the classes that I was taking or my friends, but the kinds of very real problems that these students were facing were things around, I just don't have a new backpack to take to school, or I lack the very basic supplies that I need. And even more basic than that, facing bullying for your economic circumstances. And so that prompted me at the time to want to start this nonprofit organization towards building just a better environment for them, or just doing any little help that we can. And so we started with putting up fundraisers and putting up backpack drives and putting up socks and sweater drives to make sure people were warm during the winter time, to make sure people's basic needs were provided for. And very quickly, as we started to work along with what were called McKinney-Vento organizations. McKinney-Vento is a public program in which each school district within the United States is responsible for taking care of its homeless and foster youth. And having worked with them, we realized that there's a huge imbalance within the Silicon Valley of people who wanted to give versus people who were in need. In the age of the internet, it's very easy for us to find things on Amazon or eBay, anything that we want to buy. There's several marketplaces available. Even in the hotel industry, we see that Airbnb is providing lodging for people who may need it, and connecting them to people who may provide lodging. But there's very few opportunities like the ones we see within the giving space. There are examples out there of people just purely giving money, but there's very few out there in terms of volunteering efforts, giving your time, giving your kind, in terms of maybe it might be extra blankets or extra clothing that you might have at home. And we felt that there was a need to support those who are in need, or other nonprofit organizations, to be able to help those who are underserved. And furthermore, beyond that, we found that these nonprofit organizations struggled with things like social media marketing. How do you create a payments system or a payments gateway? And so we felt that there was also a need for them to be able to connect to the overall internet infrastructure, the overall internet landscape, in a way that facilitated or helped their operations, right? And I think that's why innovation is so important within the space of giving, because I think the upcoming generation and several people have all of the talents necessary to help, but the awareness towards the problem and the connection of talent and the connection of resources to those who might need it is something that I think still needs to be developed upon. And we've created the Tile Giving application as a means of connecting donors to donees. We don't take any of the funds along the way. 100% of the funds that donors provide to the donees are given to them. And it gives the opportunity for, there was a blind school in India that needed funding for children who wanted education. And we were able to provide that funding through the Power of the Tile Giving app. And that just goes to show that we can connect people all over the world towards towards the spirit of helping other people and understanding the problems that may be faced by others who could be thousands of miles away from us. And so with that in mind, we've obviously continued to develop tell giving beyond just the tell giving application, but also tell radio, which helps tell inspiring stories around kindness and helps tell inspiring stories around volunteering and and other kinds of awareness around, say, mental health and food habits. And from there, we've really sought to build an ecosystem-like environment where people can think about kindness and can help others.
Amazing, this concept of creating a marketplace to support easy flow of funds, knowledge, awareness, inspiring. And Shawn, would you like to go next on the same question?
Yeah, absolutely. So 12 years ago, I ran a global sales team for a technology company. I was in Silicon Valley quite a bit, meeting with those tech giants and proposing various web and e-com and data solutions to them. And I was on the road 4 nights a week, and in a hotel one night. And I'm originally from South Florida, so I happened to be in a hotel that was quite up north in the cold. So I was staying inside, and I was thinking, I wonder what happened to that little bar of soap and little bottle of shampoo that the hotel gives you when you're done using it. I never took it with me from city to city. So I called the front desk and asked what happened to the soap and shampoo when I was done using it. And they said it was thrown away. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that was a thing of waste, and I really wanted to understand how much waste was it, and was there something that could be done with it? At the time, I was really struggling and thinking about sustainability and green and what that meant as an entrepreneur even, and were there areas that I could get into that I could affect and make change in that area. So I was kind of looking for items of waste. So I did some research and figured out that at that time, if all hotels across the United States were throwing away their bars of soap, we were throwing away 1 million bars of soap every single day out of hotels across the US. And if hotels across the globe were throwing their soap away, we were throwing away 3-4 million bars of soap every single day out of those hotels. And so I thought that was a tremendous amount of waste. So over the upcoming days and weeks, I did research on how to, could soap be recycled? And I found very simple ways of melting it down and reforming it into a new bar of soap. And so I was kind of thinking about, okay, well, what would I do with recycled soap? And I found a study, a second study, and a third study, and ended up finding about 13 different studies that all showed that back then in 2009, there were 9,000 children under the age of 5 that were dying every single day to pneumonia and diarrheal disease, the #1 and #2 leading cause of death amongst children worldwide. And all these studies showed that if we just gave them soap and taught them how and when to wash their hands, that we could cut those deaths in half. And so I can recall this moment. I was sitting on my bed. I had all these studies laid out, and it was what's been described to me as a moment of obligation, where I thought there are millions of bars of soap being thrown away every day. And at the same time, there are 9,000 children dying every day who simply need soap. By the way, those studies show that if we gave them soap, we cut half the deaths out. If we gave them clean water and soap, we cut all those deaths out. And so I just said, that was an injustice. That didn't seem right to me. And so I gathered some family members and convinced them, probably have a little bit of the crazy inside of them as I do, convinced them all to get in a single car garage. And we all got into a single car garage in downtown Orlando. We sat around on upside down pickle buckets with potato peelers, and we'd collect used bars of soap from hotels across Orlando. We'd scrape the outside of the bars of soap to surface clean them. And we had meat grinders where we grind the soap up. And then we had these cookers, and we cook them. We cook them into a paste and cook out all the impurities and sort of sterilize it. And we made these big wood soap molds. And when the paste was cooked, we would, after a couple hours, we'd put the paste in these wood soap molds, and overnight they would dry and reform a new bar. And we'd cut them up the next day and put them on racks and dry it. And that's how we were making recycled soap. We had this whole vision that we were going to create this global impact company that was going to take the used soaps and bottles from hotels, recycle those items, and send them to children and families and mothers around the world who were in so desperate need, in so many cases, would literally save their lives. We have since launched more products, which we may talk about, but I'll tell you on that one impact product, in 12 years, We have 9,000 hotels that operate our program across the globe. We have recycling centers in Orlando, Vegas, Montreal, Punta Cana, Amsterdam, UK, Hong Kong. We operate hotels Singapore and Japan and Taiwan and across the EU and UK and in North America. And in 12 years, we've sent 70 million bars of soap to children, families, and mothers in 127 countries across the globe. Prior to the global pandemic hitting, the death rate to children under the age of 5 dying to hygiene-related illnesses reduced by more than 65%. We went into communities and not just gave soap. Well, oftentimes, most of the time, soap was sort of a starter. We came in and we educated, and we brought in clean water solutions, and we brought in sanitation solutions, and we found local soap makers who could make soap and continue and sustain that habit that we helped to create. So in so many places, whether it was in Nairobi or India or the Philippines, we saw it starting in the school, children learning the importance of washing their hands with clean water and soap, and then spreading that to their parents, and us surveying their parents years after and seeing that they still buy soap today for the household because they understand its importance from a hygiene perspective, from a health perspective. So we've seen incredible work there. And again, for me and for those that I speak to at colleges and all across the globe, just started with an idea, started with a thought, kind of here's this thing of waste, and I think I could go help somebody with it. And that, started in a garage, has now turned into a global enterprise that is literally saving and helping those millions of people across the globe. And so my bit of inspiration to anybody that's watching this right now is we need those ideas. We need those innovations. We need those that are willing to take a step and take a leap and go from running a global technology company sales team to getting into a garage and scraping soap with potato peelers, because the end game on that is, in this case, millions and millions of mothers and families who understand the importance of clean water and soap and washing themselves, and who literally have not died, have not had to, mothers have not had to in many cases, bury their children because of a simple idea that started in a garage. And so if there's somebody listening to this today that needs to hear that inspiration, it's what it takes. It takes that moment of obligation. If you're feeling tugged, you got to go for it, because the world needs it, and we can do it. We just need that type of thought innovation and that type of consciousness to occur across the globe.
Fantastic, Shawn. What an awe-inspiring story, and of the impact it has around the world. Gregory, would you like to go next?
Thanks, Tushar. Shawn, that was just very inspiring, and same, that just the entrepreneurial spirit and the entrepreneurial spirit to do good and to do good better. So very creative. As I think about what's motivated me in the work of Catholic Charities, it really is about changing lives for good. And it's about walking with people as they find their own path to self-sufficiency, sustainability, and self-reliance in a community. And I remember a number of years ago when I first came to San Jose, I had gone to a conference on ending child poverty. And I was very inspired by this conference, but frustrated that we had all these great ideas, but didn't seem to have a mechanism to implement them. And so I wrote on my whiteboard, what will revolutionize how we care for those who are poor and those who are in need, and how those who are in poverty and need can find the resources to help themselves, and how we can form community with one another. And in my journey since then, we've done, it's Silicon Valley, right? So we do experiments. We fail fast, we fail forward, right? And so we tried a number of different models of anti-poverty work. And there are several that have stuck and seem to be growing. And one is a bit of a hybrid based on the Promised Neighborhood model that came out of the Harlem Children's Zone with Jeffrey Canada, but we did a little bit of different twist on it, which is focus on the children in the families and community, focus on the what we call the cradle to career pathway, but do it with a wraparound centered in the community with schools, the public sector, nonprofits, all wrapping around the child, the family, and the community. Listening to what they say is important. So the moms, we started in this one neighborhood in San Jose, in the Santee neighborhood in East San Jose. And we listened to the moms, and the moms said, we want our children to be safe going to and from school. So public safety was important. We want our children to get a good education. So early childhood development through really rigorous education improvement. And third, they said, we want to get jobs and we want to learn English. And so the whole economic development piece. And then we want to live in a community where the youth are cared for, where there's ability to grow our own gardens, and where we live in safe and affordable housing. So it was the moms from the Santee neighborhood that really inspired us with a new model of disrupting poverty. That what we say, it's not just about the hand out, but the hand up. And it's really about the community saying what they, not just what they need, but what they want for their children. Because we know that with the community leading, they're going to make the decisions for themselves, for their children. They're going to make the ones because they care most for their own families. And our job is to be innovative and creative. So to bring those resources to bear. So what we did is we brought some social entrepreneurship models of micro enterprise development. So for the women who weren't able to get jobs as employees, we helped them develop their own businesses in terms of micro enterprise, that then they could serve others doing childcare or catering or other businesses. And for the families, it was all about that child succeeding from cradle to career. And that is inspiring me still today. And so now we're expanding this model with what we're calling accompaniment volunteers, which like promotores, if you're familiar with the promotores, which are the community health workers, but it's health, not just in terms of physical health, but also all the social determinants of health. And these promotores and accompaniment volunteers are themselves from the community, have experienced what the community members have experienced. And so we're building this model out and finding really creative ways, again, of wrapping employment, housing, food, mental health, education, all of that around where the community itself says, this is what we need, this is what we want, and we're walking side by side with them to their vision. So I'm really excited about that. It's going to be a long journey. It's been a long journey getting here, but there are movements like this all throughout the US, and there are movements like this all throughout the world. With the promotores has been around for at least 50, 60 years. And I think with an intentional model of a wraparound with the public sector, the nonprofit sector, and for-profit, I think has an opportunity for a sustainable community where they can meet their own goals. Thank you.
Thanks. That was simply amazing. Some of the things that I kind of picked up was cradle to career. What a fantastic concept. And handout, not handout, but hand up. And not what we think they need, but what they actually need. Fantastic. And Dr. Solomon, your story?
Yes, very quickly, let me see if I can articulate this in a few minutes here. I have a hard stop at 8. My life has focused on 4 things. Neglected people is the first thing. The second is neglected regions of the world. And thirdly, neglected resources. And lastly, the neglected planet. And I wrote books on all these. And if you want to really get a capture of my whole journey and how I think, through these things. I know they're all available on Amazon. You can download them at any time. The first one is neglected people. Is my own personal journey, how a person who is totally written off by the world as worthless, he does not need a PhD, he does not need any education, he needs access to resources where he can learn and conduct business and do things. So it's all about that. That's how this whole idea of smart villages began. Individuals, the DNA in a human being is worth more than a PhD. God has already granted the right for a person to rise to the occasion, but the social pressures of the world, keep these people depressed and oppressed and away from resources. They don't need anything. You just need to let them be. And that's the first book. It's called The Untouchables. So you may want to do it. It's a good reading. It's a real story of 3 generations, and it really kind of articulates that point very well. The second one is neglected regions of the world. This is it has to do with smart villages. We have 650 villages in India and 1 million villages in China. And this is where most of the people in the world live. 3.4 billion people live in rural areas. They're cut off from resources, tools, access to markets, and to communication. And a smart village is not something when I say we had to build infrastructure. It's building people. It's giving them resources, access to platforms like the one that you have right now, access to resources and education where people can learn on their own and build their own infrastructure. And that's what a smart village is. It is a community empowered with digital technology and open innovation platforms to access global markets. That how a person in the remotest region in the world, if he has these things, he can really rise to the occasion and create jobs locally and so on, sustain themselves. The second other, so Berkeley actually has an initiative on the smart villages movement. So we got started a while ago, and I was responsible for that in India with the government of India, the president of India. We worked on this initiative, and it's still going on. It's part of UC Berkeley's initiative. The other initiative that we also have is called Rebuilding India Initiative. It's called Neglected Resources. India is one of the most wealthiest nations in the world, but the resources, whether it's people or natural or agricultural resources, are untapped. The other journey that I have is about the planet, the neglected planet, and that is the declining balance sheet of the earth. It's a book, How to Think Like a CEO of the Planet. It's the foreword was written by me and by Ed Catmull, the president and CEO of Pixar Studios, the former president of Pixar Studios. The reason I chose him to write the foreword, Walt Disney Studios, is because they're into making movies. And actually, my book is about, as I was an accounting professor at USC for many years, I think like assets. I give life to assets, like water. There's a chapter on water, a chapter on forests, chapter on agricultural land. They speak to you in this book in first person. He says, I am your forest. I am the lungs of the earth. I process so much oxygen. So it's almost like they have a personality and they speak to you. So one day we may have a Disney movie where these characters kind of educate us as a person. They have a soul. It's just not the human beings, but plants, even rocks and trees, they all have souls. They all contribute to the well-being and stewardship of the planet. And we need to harmonize those things. And that's what this book is about. And that's basically a little bit of my journey. And I even have a website called balancesheetoftheearth.org with the United Nations data. I actually created an actual balance sheet. You can see it declining year after year, while the corporate wealth is increasing exponentially. And one is full of air and the other one is real. One is real value, the other one is perceived value that is totally useless to us. And we need to kind of focus on, that's what these UN goals are, SDGs. They're about real value, not the perceived value.
What an amazing way to look at it, being the CEO of the planet and looking at the balance sheet and real assets versus perceived assets. And I know you have to kind of do a hard stop at the hour. If we are able to come back to you, we will. But thank you so much for spending the time today and sharing your perspective and letting people know all the good work that you do at Haas School and as the CEO of a couple of
stay on for a few
organizations.
more minutes. I can tell the phone rings, so Tushar, so we can keep going.
Sure, I'll circle back to you. Thank you so much. And so I know all of you are passionate about it, and the work is simply amazing and inspiring. So we are short of time, unfortunately. I was wondering if you had to give a message to the people. Achieving SDGs or sustainability goals is a mammoth endeavor, and it'll require the efforts of every individual on the planet to do their part. So maybe in a couple of sentences, what message or call to action do you have for our audience? What should they do? And I'm sure some of these stories have already inspired them, but maybe a couple of sentences about, what do you want them to do? So maybe we can start with Tej.
Definitely. I would say to our audience, please get involved in the tile giving application. We are posting various kinds of nonprofit organizations and various organizations and people that will need your help. So please post on there. And if there are causes that you are passionate about and you feel help solve some of the UN sustainability goals and efforts, please post those efforts and organizations that you feel are contributing to the cause on the application so that we can spread awareness. I would also say to any high school students that may be watching this program, please get involved within the Tile Scouts program, where we're teaching social entrepreneurship, and we're encouraging young individuals to start their own social enterprises that may help, that could help the environment, that could help society in any ways. And we are encouraging these high school students to be thinking about new innovative business models, new kinds of volunteering efforts, and various ways in which they can benefit the community. And so I think there are plenty of ways to get involved with the Touch a Life Foundation, and we would encourage anyone who's watching today to get involved in any way they can.
Yeah, that's a fantastic message, Tej. And I think you have inspired people with your own story. When you see something, you can do something about it. And when you have created this ecosystem of a marketplace, I think it's very easy to do it for people who really want to do something about changing the world. And Gregory, maybe your message?
Several things people can do right away. First, learn. So educate yourself, and not just through theoretical learning. Get to know the people who are struggling. Be in relationship with them. So come volunteer, either at Catholic Charities or another organization. Be in relationship with those who are struggling to improve their lives. The second is to give back in some way, whether it's through donations like in Touch a Life or other ways, or giving back through your own personal engagement. And then the third way is to advocate. So if you are passionate about any of the social development goals in your local community, nationally or globally, use your voice. You have a lot more power than you think you do.
Fantastic. Volunteer, give back, get involved, and be an advocate for these changes, which a lot of people are doing. And Shawn, your thoughts on
those are
message
awesome.
or key takeaways?
Yeah, those are great thoughts. Look, when Clean the World started in that garage 12 years ago, today, I told you about sort of the soap and what we do. We're involved in 11 of the 17 SDGs. Kids are now going to school more because they're not sick. We're involved in microfinancing, micro-lending, specifically to women-owned businesses, gender equality, SDG 5, quality education is SDG 4, good health and well-being is SDG 3, SDG 6 is clean water, sanitation, and hygiene, which is obviously perfectly centered. And we are a member of the UN's Global WASH Cluster, so we're driving those strategies. We are doing menstrual health. We're helping recycle and get menstrual pads for young girls who many times when that period of their life starts, they exit school because they're stigmatized, but now they're not. Now they're staying in school. And we're actually having the boys that are their age do those recycling of those pads as well and creating those pads so that they can understand and educate the importance there. So I say all of that to say that we started with a very simple idea in a garage, in a hotel room one night, bar of soap being thrown away. Could we recycle it? Could we help others? As we fast forward 12 years, we've branched and we're impacting so many different areas. Don't be overwhelmed by, I've got to do all this. All this will come. What you've got to start with is that moment of obligation. You got to start with what your part is. There's almost 8 billion people on this earth. As Dr. Darwin said, how do we connect them and get them the resources to be a part? If every one of those 8 billion did their little part, those little things would all add up to the major transformational changes that we need. So I like to say to my staff and folks I talk to all the time, I say, plan your work and work your plan. Don't get compartmentalized. Don't think so big that you overwhelm. It's great to think big. Actually, think big, but don't let that big thinking suffocate you from being able to take that next step and do that next thing. Find what that little thing is in your community, in your household, in your school, in your neighborhood, at your job, whatever that is, to make that change happen. And I promise you, I'm an example. I'm probably the least educated guy on this panel. I don't have a college degree, but I have a seat at the United Nations General Assembly, and I'm driving global strategies, all because of a simple idea that started in a hotel room one night and continuing to just try to figure out how to solve a problem that I thought was a problem. So do the same thing. Start small, and you never know where it's going to go. And even if it stays small, it's important to what we are all trying to do, especially if we can get all 8 billion people across the globe doing their small part to make the whole thing happen. So, and awesome pleasure to be alongside everybody today.
Fantastic. Thank you. What an inspiring message. Start small, think big, and work at ground level and make a difference. And you are an example of that, where you started and where you are today. Great. Thank you. And Dr. Solomon, we still have time. What words do you have for people to get involved, to get inspired, to do their part, to make a difference?
Yes, I think to carry on that theme, what Shawn just said, start small, think big. So I'll say 2 things. One is transform your village or your community. And secondly, transform the world. If we all focus on that as people on this planet, we can accomplish a lot. On the transforming the village, I wrote 2 books on smart villages. How to create smart villages, that's one book, and the other one is called Road to Mori. That's my first book. The Road to Mori. Mori is an untouchable village that no one went to because it was isolated for people who clean dead bodies and clean the fecal matter. They only come out at nighttime, and that's a historical thing. But I call it the Road to Mori because the road that where no one entered became a road to Google, IBM, Ericsson, about 26 companies that came from Silicon Valley to this village to make the village smart, to create a pilot, what could be done with technology, with very simple digital cost-effective technology to transform people. That's the first smart village called Mori, the Road to Mori. You may want to get that book and see how that was done. And we're working on that initiative.
Yeah.
Transform the planet. And that's read my other book, the How to Think Like the CEO of the Planet and the Declining Balance Sheet of the Earth. Also data published by the United Nations there. And I think we all can play a role because we cannot say that I don't have need of the other person. So we all need to work together in order to accomplishing this. There's one little picture that I have in my book on the balance sheet of the Earth book. It's a picture of 2 people on a boat, a girl and a guy. And there was a hole in the boat. So both of them are in a sinking boat. The boat is sinking. And the girl was taking this little bowl and trying to dish out the water very, very fast to keep them safe. the guy was sitting way back at the thing and saying, I'm glad the hole is not on my end of it. You see, and that's the lack of responsibility, lack of stewardship. We cannot say to us, to your brother, I have no need of you. We all need each other. And I think that goes back to the first two children in the Bible, Cain and Abel. And I said, I'm not my brother's keeper. But God says,
Right.
and appeal to him. And that responsibility is all of us. We are each other's keepers. And I think that's the way to go. Okay, and God bless you.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, all of the panelists, for, you guys are all busy, and for taking the time to speak with us, and more importantly, inspiring us. When it's the itch, or when you have that discomfort or obligation, it's our job to do something about that. And what fantastic stories of, number one, there is so much that needs to be done. And number two, if we all do our little part, we can definitely make this world a better place. And third, and most importantly, the time to, Warren Buffett says that the time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the next best time is to do it now. And if we don't do it now, the clock is ticking. And we are hoping that with this panel, we have inspired people with your stories and all the good work, and hopefully to for them to be inspired to get involved. And there are so many opportunities, from reading the books from Dr. Solomon, where there is a blueprint of how you can make a difference, or getting involved with TAL, or getting involved with Shawn and Clean the World, or getting involved in communities with Gregory. And I'm myself inspired, and I think we'll wind up with those thoughts. Thanks once again. Thank you, Tal, and thank you, Touch a Life Foundation, for arranging this. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. God bless you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you.